Hi, Tech family. Welcome back to another episode of the day. Here we are with another exciting video. As we all know, networking is not just a matter of reading concepts, but also putting all those concepts in practice by building labs using different environments such as Packet Tracer, EvenJ, or GNS3. If you also have a chance to actually work on physical devices, that's a great options because it's always great to work on physical devices. For this video, we are going to use Packet Tracer for our lab. Today's video, we are diving in the technology of VLAN. What's the target of the video? The target of the video is to understand what is VLAN, why do we need a VLAN, or why do we use VLAN, and how does the VLAN work. If you want to discover how the VLAN works and understand what is VLAN, stay to the end of this video for you to discover what is this technology and how can you implement it. Here we are. Welcome to our lab. As we just said, we have three. The target is to understand first of all. So what we do is step one is to understand what is VLAN, and the second one is to understand why you need to answer this one. Why do you need, or why do you need a VLAN? And the step three will be how does the VLAN work? Yeah, so this are the questions we are going to answer. Okay, so the first one, what is VLAN? VLAN stands for virtual LAN. It means virtual local area network. Let's put it like this. So virtual local area network. So the VLAN is basically obtained after segmenting the broadcast domain. So what do I mean as a broadcast domain? We all know the switch has one broadcast domain and then the collisions domain depends on the ports available. When you have your broadcast domain, if you don't want, let's say, all the users to be all connected into one domain, so what you would do is you actually broadcast that, you segment the broadcast domain in order to have smallest domain. So the VLAN is just a technology, okay, through which the one broadcast domain is segmented into smallest domain. That's what you can keep as a definition of a VLAN. It means what? If we have VLAN 1, okay, we have to segment that VLAN 1 into smallest domain where we are going to create other VLAN. Let me pick an example of a switch. This is my switch, for instance. If I click on the switch and then go to, let's wait a bit, the switch is powering on. All right, it has done powering. So if we check show VLAN brief, what do we have? We realize that all the interfaces we have are part of one particular domain, which is the VLAN 1. So this is the main domain on this particular switch. So what you can do is, if you want, by default, when you want to connect all the users connected to any of these interfaces will now connected to the native VLAN or to the broadcast domain. So if you want to segment the users, or if you don't want all the users to be connected into one VLAN, what you can do is you need to break down this particular domain into smallest domain. It means what? We need to use what? VLAN. This is the technology we are going to cover today. And why do you need VLAN? So come back to this scenario. As I just said, all the users by default are interconnected into one domain, which is VLAN 1. It means if they're all communicating at the same time, they can saturate what? The bandwidth. Yeah, especially when it's a fresh communication where the MAC address table is empty. There are some address resolution protocol that are supposed to be generated by the switch to determine the destination's MAC addresses, and then it's going to actually congest the link. So to avoid network congestion, because the network congestion reduces performance of the network, to avoid the network congestion, we're now going to use the concept of VLAN, means breaking down or segmenting this domain into smallest domain. So that's the reason why we need VLAN. And the step 3 is, how does the VLAN work? So the VLAN works similar to the normal LAN, except there are some additional configuration that need to be added for the VLAN to work. So in this case, what we are going to do is we will do a particular lab. Okay, we will do a particular lab where I will demonstrate how to create VLAN, how to create VLAN, how to configure, and then how to make the VLAN to communicate. So what are the labs we are going to do? We have lab one. Lab one that we are going to do will be on inter-Vlan. We have inter-Vlan communication, and then lab 2 will be on routing. We have routing on a stick. So this is what you are going to look at. So these are the 2 labs we'll be having, okay, for you to better understand the concept of VLAN and how it's been implemented. So we'll start with the first lab, which is the inter-VLAN communication. What are we going to do? So we'll have our switch over here, and then we have a router. We'll pick any of the router, but I prefer picking the 2911. I'll actually bring it over here, and then I'll pick, let's say, my end devices. Okay, so the target for this one, the target for the inter-VLAN communication is to create, let's say, three VLANs. Create 3 VLANs. Okay, it will be the same thing for this one as well. I'm just going to use 3 VLANs. So we will create 3 VLANs. All right. So what I'm going to do over here is that I'll connect, okay, my physical devices first. I have here, let's say this is for the first VLAN, and then I have the second VLAN that will be here, and I have the third VLAN that's gonna be here, right? Okay. So one thing, the difference between the inter-VLAN communication and router on stick, the difference between these 2 types of inter-VLAN communication, okay, is that when it comes to inter-VLAN communication, the number of VLAN you have should be the number of physical links you have from your switch towards your router. But we all know that is not practical, because imagine we having 10 VLANs over here. How are we going to connect 10 physical links from the switch to the router? It's gonna be messy. Okay, so the best thing to actually do is maybe to have one physical link, and then try to manage the physical link to let all the VLANs to communicate through that particular link. But in this case, I'm gonna use the inter-VLAN. So since I have three VLANs that I'm gonna create, I'll make sure I have 3 physical links, and then each link will now be served for each VLAN, because if we don't have the gateway for each VLAN, the VLANs are not going to communicate. As we all know, each VLAN represents a smaller network, okay? And then for a network to go outside of its premise, it needs a gateway. So we need a gateway for the VLAN to actually communicate. So what we will do is I'm gonna separate, because when it comes to the first lab, my switch has 24 ports. Okay, 24 ports. How am I going to separate them? I will pick VLAN 5, okay, and I will use for VLAN 5. Fast. I will use fast 0 to probably 9, and then so fast 01 to fast 9, okay, and then I'll use VLAN 10, okay. I'll pick fast 0/10, all right, to fast 0/ that will probably be that will probably be, let's say, 15, okay. Or I can change. I prefer picking 8 from here, and then I'll use 9, right? And then here I'll use 15. That's great. And the third VLAN will be VLAN, let's say 20, okay. And then I'll have fast 0/16 to fast 0/ I'll pick 21. All right, so this is actually how I'm going to assign them. It means from VLAN 5, these are the ports it's gonna use, and then VLAN 10, these are the ports it's gonna use. VLAN 20, these are the ports it's gonna use. But this assignment need to be done through configuration, because by default, all these ports, okay, all these interfaces are assigned to VLAN 1, which is the native VLAN, right? So so actually this is how it's going to be. So what I'm gonna do now is to just connect to the physical link. It means this is the VLAN 5, VLAN 10, and VLAN 15. So I'll start with this one from VLAN 1, from interface 1. Okay, I have to interconnect interface 2 to here. Then this I have to interconnect here the router and the switch. As we all know, sorry, for the VLAN 5, the range is gonna use is from fast Ethernet 1 to fast Ethernet 9. So I can pick, let's confirm over here, from fast Ethernet 8. So I will pick any of the gigaports over here, and then pick the interface that is in the range that I've specified, okay. So I will pick fast 08, because the fast 08 is part of the range of VLAN 5, okay, and move to the second one. The second one, I'm starting from VLAN 9, from fast Ethernet 9, fast Ethernet 10. I'll connect, and then I have from the router to the switch, I will connect to, let's check, okay, fast Ethernet 15. So I can connect from any of the gig toward this, and then I'll pick 15, because I know fast Ethernet 15 is part of the VLAN 15 range that I've specified earlier on, and we are going to connect the last one. I'll pick 16, okay, for the VLAN 20. I'll pick 16. This is it, 17, right? And then the last link from the router to the switch is gonna be on port fast Ethernet 21, because that's what I've specified over here. So this is how the interfaces are going to be reassigned to each VLAN. So this actually is the physical part of, connecting the various interfaces or portion of VLAN to the interfaces possible, and also make sure each VLAN has its own physical link that's gonna use for the gateway. So anytime it tries going outside, it's gonna use that physical link using its gateway to exit. The disadvantage of this one is that when you have more LAN, it's not gonna be nice to have multiple links from the street to the router. In fact, when it comes to the router, to the gig ports sometimes are limited. So if you have to create 10 VLANs, it's not going to be effective to have 10 physical links, and then that's going to be messy as well. So in our second lab, we'll look at how we can just use one physical link and then manage the number of VLANs you can have. So no matter how many VLANs you have, we are just going to use one physical link, but that one is going to be covered in the second lab. Okay, that's a router on stick. So once we are done with the physical topology, let's start our configuration. But to not make the video long, we'll actually record another video where we'll actually focus on the configuration of creating VLANs, configuring the VLANs, and then allowing these VLANs to work. So stay tuned and then follow us on the next video for you to discover how this thing is done and then how possible it is for the VLANs to communicate among them. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.